Welcome to the Cam and Joe Show. My name is Joe Steele with my good friend,
Mr. Cameron. What's going on, big dog?
You know,
How
man,
are you?
it's
Happy
been
Friday.
a fantastic week. How was
Cheers,
your
man.
week?
I'm blessed. I can't complain. Work's good. Home's good. Pinch me. I need nothing else.
I'm not.
Don't actually pinch me.
I'm not gonna do it.
All right, cheers.
Yeah.
I'm just out of pinching zone.
Actually, no. But if I did it, I'd pull hairs. You have a nice set
I've got
rug.
I've got Robin Williams. Have you ever noticed how hairy that dude's arms are?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God.
But I normally don't look at his arms because I'm not a weirdo.
Oh well, it's the first thing I look at when I meet a man.
Does your I was gonna say, does your wife know of your arm?
Oh yeah,
fetish?
it's awkward.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I love it.
Therapy with Larissa starts actually this coming week.
Oh, that's really good. Are you gonna help him with his arm fetish? That would be amazing.
Good morning, Larissa. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm very well. Myself and Joe, we are super excited.
Oh, yeah.
You took the time out of your morning to spend a little bit of time with us. I'm blessed to know you. I've known you for years and years now, dating back to, my dad knowing your family for all those years. It's a blessing to know you personally. What I want to get out of the show, I want the audience to get to know you a little bit more.
Absolutely.
I want the audience to get to know a little bit more about the services that Sutter County provides from a therapy setting. And I just want to kind of give you your time and your platform to talk about what you do and how you help from a therapy standpoint. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like I watched some of your guys' episodes and I noticed there was a theme. People always start with, I'm a Yuba City native. So I'm going to keep that theme.
Okay. All
I
right.
like that.
I'm a Yuba City native.
There you
Oh,
go.
nice.
Born and raised. I went to, professionally, I went to Yuba College and then
Nice.
I went to William Jessup and then I went to National University and that's how I got my education. Started professionally in Sacramento for a nonprofit for foster youth.
Nice.
And
Awesome.
then halfway through master's program, went to another nonprofit and worked with juvenile probation. So the highest risk
Yeah.
juveniles on probation in Sacramento County.
Wow.
All of those years were spent during the pandemic.
Oh.
Wow.
So I was already going into that job, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Going into that job January, February, learning the job, March. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then after that, completed all of my 3,000 clinical hours that
Yeah.
I needed to get my license.
It's awesome.
Once I was done with that, I was also done commuting from Yuba City to Sacramento.
Good for you.
And so I was like, I think I'm going to go work for my county.
Good for you.
So that's the short version of,
The short version of the long.
oh yeah, because I've been in school since 2009.
But do you now have your master's?
Yeah. Well, so I had my master's. I got my master's in 2020. And then from 2020 to August of 2022, I was getting my hours.
Wow.
And
And that's
then-
3,000 clinical hours.
That's crazy.
And then last
Wow.
year, so then you apply for your license.
Yeah.
The board is the board, and they're going to
Yeah.
take however long they need
Yeah.
to take. They approve you. Oh, you can take the exam. Then you're on hold for 3 months because they don't want you to take it right away.
Sure.
So then all of last year was spent studying. I got my license in August, and then I was like, I'm free.
Good for you.
That's awesome.
I'm
Yeah,
32 and I'm free.
Well, you know
That's
what?
awesome.
Sticking with it, though, I bet you wouldn't have it any other way because you stuck through it,
Yeah.
and now you have something tangible at the end.
Yeah.
You didn't back out of it, and that's props to you on that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I bet you it was different. How different is it going from a Zoom call to a physical? Because to me, my brain always goes, I read a room, right?
Yeah.
You can't read a room when it's on a computer.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'm just curious about that because that's always been a question.
That was hard because all of our services were in person.
Yeah.
And even my education
As
was in person.
it should be.
Yeah.
As it should be. It's
Yeah,
therapy.
my education, I went into that program and I said, can we do hybrid? And they said, absolutely not. You have to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
Overnight.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to be online. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the Zoom thing, to answer your question, was
Yeah.
extremely hard. But
Sure.
we were also, the world was upside down.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Everything was upside
Oh,
down.
absolutely.
And we didn't even have Zoom for the first 2.5 weeks.
Oh,
We had
man.
phones.
So,
So I'm
you're having
taking
to
new
do.
clients.
On your cell phone?
Hi.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
you can't. So it's not even
Juvenile
video.
probationaries. Like, they're like, I don't want to be on the phone with you.
Yeah. You're like, yeah. How does that make you feel? Like,
Yeah.
boop, hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, well, that went well.
Yeah. So it was about learning how to read the room. It was also learning this language and narrative, I guess, that
Sure.
I go into a session saying, hey, look, like I'm going to ask a lot of clarifying questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because I can't see your body language.
Yeah.
I'm also going to ask extra questions because I don't know if girlfriend's in the room. I don't know
Sure.
if the
Yeah.
cat or where are you,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we had kids taking phone Zoom calls in the mall courtyard. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
for
like,
sure.
hey, we're going to do therapy. I'm like, no, you still have to take this as a professional setting.
You're like, hey, I got all my friends. They need
Yeah.
therapy too. Can
Yeah.
we all have
Yeah,
therapy?
quiet.
That
quiet.
happens
Quiet.
so
I'm
many
on the phone with my
times.
therapist. Yeah. What do
So
you
then by the end of this like pandemic thing, I had the longest disclaimer for my kids. They were like,
Yeah.
oh, all this stuff happened. I'm like, you wouldn't believe the situations that I've been in. I'm trying to get ahead of it
Please
all.
don't answer the phone on the toilet.
Yeah.
It's happened a couple times.
A kid fell asleep
Really?
On the phone?
on the Zoom call.
You just think you have such
I
a
just
therapeutic voice.
sat there while he slept for 35 minutes. Hello, can you wake up? Can you
It's
wake?
like,
Yeah. After 35 minutes, I just hung up.
yeah.
Well, you know what? Props to you for sticking for 35 minutes. I went
Yeah.
like 5-minute rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like,
Wow.
yeah.
Is he being billed? This is like, okay. I'll
Yeah,
sit
then I
here
had to
and
like,
drink my coffee.
I was gonna build Medi-Cal for that, so it was like a non-bill. Tried to bill report.
Oh my gosh. You're like, hey,
We
buddy.
got really creative in the pandemic, to say the least.
I believe it.
I don't doubt it. So gosh, from working with youth in Sacramento,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
what was some of the, I mean, obviously you can't talk about specific stories,
Mm-hmm.
but what were some of the reoccurring themes behind some of those
Mm-hmm.
kids' stories?
I think the biggest theme was that a lot of families in Sacramento were, I guess you could call like transplants. They weren't born and raised in Sacramento.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
So you don't have all the natural supports. And that comes up with a lot of problems. You think of, I'm grateful that I got to work in Sacramento before Sutter County.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because you come to Sutter County and everyone is a Yuba City native.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone has grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and
Additional help.
pretend aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
biggest problem. And so we once again had to get really creative. Like, oh, do you have a coach that really is
Sure.
invested? A teacher, a
Yeah.
neighbor.
How often did you hear no's to all of those?
Oh, all the
questions?
time.
Yeah.
There was, especially in juvenile probation, with the stigma of you're a therapist and then there's an officer involved in my family.
Yeah.
No.
I had so many kids that graduated from my program without an adult present in services.
Wow. That's heartbreaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
The parents would go to court because they were mandated to be in court, but they weren't involved. And I had, at the end, especially in the pandemic and as the pandemic drug on,
Sure.
I had moms calling me and say, hey, this is Larissa. I'm assigned to your kid.
Sure.
Blah, 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 blah. And they would say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Have fun with him. I'll see you in 6 months.
Wow.
And I was like, what, you're really going to check out like that? Oh yeah. Please fix him.
He's all yours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Please fix my son.
That.
That's a sad. Well,
Well,
day
no,
for
that
society.
is a society that
You're failing your children.
it's a
at that point.
society that believes the system knows better than they do. It's a lack
Yeah.
of faith in yourself and your
Yeah.
things. If
Yeah.
I just looked at my wife and said, "Have fun raising the kids. I'll come back when they're 18."
Best of luck.
Well, that's not fair to her.
Yeah,
But it's
no.
sad that our whole system
Yeah.
is set that way.
Yeah, daddy government's gonna take care of me, and I'm sure the system is going to raise you and treat you well.
Yeah.
And then it's systemic, and it's just gonna breed a lot more of what you get, and then
Well,
then you have generations going through the same
yeah.
therapy setting because there's the same lack of family unit and all the ties to family
Sure.
unit.
Well, to defend, I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of doing so, but to defend the system that is established, it was established because we let go of the reins years ago.
Yeah.
It had to counteract what was not happening. There was no nurturing. It was nothing but neglect. So what do you think a system's going to do? Well, we have to have working people. We have to have jobs. Society has to move forward, even if parents don't want to be parents.
Right.
And so it's like we can get mad at the system all day, but I
Yeah.
can't. I look at it and go, you are what we created because our lack of conviction.
Yeah.
Now, the nice
Yeah,
thing about
I get that.
nonprofit is we are really creative.
Sure.
And so that mom that would say to me, okay, bye. I was like, oh, no. Do you work? Yeah, I work. I'm so busy. Do you get a lunch break? Yeah, I do. Okay, can I bring you lunch?
Sure.
And we'll stay in my car and we'll have lunch and I'll listen to you cry, like vent it out. I call it the
Yeah.
sludge.
Nice.
You got to drain off this sludge.
Heck yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I feel so much better. Okay, maybe I can be involved in this, my
amazing.
kids'
That's awesome.
treatment. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Meeting them where they're at. Cheers.
Yep.
Cheers to getting creative and being there to get into the nitty and the gritty. What did you find most often that my mind goes to the breaking apart and the lack of value seen in society today with the family unit.
Yeah.
Were you seeing a lot of fatherlessness in those homes? Yeah.
Yeah.
What and the women that you were speaking with and their children, did you see like a lot of like was it gang activity? Was it what was some
The
of the
connection and belonging?
Yeah.
Yeah, like where
Yeah.
they found that.
Yeah.
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 So it was a lot of gang involvement.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's so funny because in 2016, obviously the person that I was when I left the job in Sacramento in 2022, 6 years later,
Sure.
I was sitting, I'm now a person where I'm like, oh, you're in a gang? Like, I mean, people that are watching, like, don't come at me, please. But I'm like, oh, okay, like, well, that's your family. Like,
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong.
you know what I mean? It
No,
was
you're
just,
not wrong.
and I once again, a lot of disclaimers to my kids. Like,
Yeah.
I don't condone
Sure.
maybe the actions, but I can understand.
Connectivity.
Like,
Yeah.
you don't have a brother, you don't
No.
have a dad. And
No. You need it.
now I'm working in a society that's not faith-based,
No,
Yeah.
for sure.
right?
100%.
So I can't say to them, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Lord,
Yeah.
Yeah. Step in.
how can I say this without actually saying the Lord?
Sure.
And I say, you know what? We're created to want to be connected,
100%.
that's the funny thing about mental health. It's
Yeah.
so biblical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's so biblical. It's like,
Yeah.
we need connection. Well, that's because the Lord created
Yeah.
us that way.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Just say it. Well, we can't say that. We can
Yeah.
say anything else though. You're like, all right.
So that's the whole thing where I was
Totally
like,
makes sense.
okay,
Yeah.
can we try to make better choices and not commit crimes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Well, the
I-
definition
yeah.
of gang has also changed. Okay, if you look
yes.
at like 1920s gangs, like, man, shit, I got
Yeah.
a machine gun, right? And it was prohibition, like we're using this, okay? And then to where we're at now, I mean, gangs were, there were people in the hippie movement that were part of the gangs. They were the ones that were standing against the government, and they were a group of people. I mean, the gang itself is a term of people that come together.
Yeah.
So in the West, it was different people. That was the posse. It was
Yeah.
a gang.
Cowboys.
So when you get to where we're at now, when a gang is a group of kids that have nothing better to do than
Yeah.
to create discourse,
right,
Yeah.
because they have
right,
no other options,
Yeah.
that's their family.
right.
Correct.
And so, I mean, I'll defend you all day because that's fair count. Because if you
Yeah.
get one kid to start holding accountability in that family,
Yeah.
then
There's
that
gonna be
family
gravity.
starts shifting everything.
Correct.
I think that's a powerful thing. I think
Yeah.
that's an influencing thing. I think that's incredible.
It is because I mean we're built in a way. We're built, designed, and created for connectivity. We know that. We've said that exact same thing
100%.
multiple podcasts. So you can't fault the kid growing up that's seeking it out.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna find it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if he doesn't have the opportunity to find it at home, he's gonna find it somewhere.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't fault the gang member. It's just unfortunately where we're at in society, the breaking apart and the lack of value in a family unit, it's just completely gone, right?
Yeah.
So what we have to do is do our best. Positions like yourself have to be created. I wish we were in a world where therapists weren't needed, right? That would be
100%.
that would be an incredible place,
100%, right?
Because
Vulnerability.
in a therapy setting, you're having to be there as a supplement to something that they may not have on their own. But cheers to stepping up and
incredible.
saying yes to that and for plugging in all those hours and master's degree. I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm also happy that you got all that education and you brought it back to Sutter County. That's awesome. We're better with you.
Oh, 100%. Well, and it's always funny because, I mean, we'll go biblical, take a parallel that I've been talking to my students about, and I tell them, hey, Jesus was 33 when he started his ministry. He was a master carpenter before that. He had a trade. He was a master at his trade, and he was so good that he was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to start doing my ministry. You have to have something that's a tradable commodity in society.
Yeah.
Just your good looks isn't going to get you far because when those fail, they're gone. Having
Joe,
some type
it's
of a
true, Joe. It's true.
I know.
That's why we're just over here on a Friday morning shooting a podcast.
Because
you
one day,
only got us so far.
I love.
I was trying to ride this friendship on your good looks alone, and here's where the bus stopped.
No, but I think it's important for us to understand, like, if you don't have value, if you don't feel like you can bring value to the table, then you need to enrich in your life so that you are bringing value to the table, because that is a factual thing. You either are a part of society bringing a skill, or you're not. And when you bring a skill, it grounds you to a level where you naturally have a support system because you have other people that have the things that you like. If you're a carpenter, you're going to surround yourself with other carpenters. And you can look at a room and be like, look at the crown molding. Oh, I would have done it better.
Yeah.
But you have that person. And so when you have a society that is all online, it's digital media, which I'm all a fan of. Discord, which is a bunch of nerds who have never met each other. I'll talk to kids and be like, oh yeah, I'm on this Discord chat. There's 3,000 dudes around the world, and we play this video game together, and we'll just talk. And I'm like, you mean you can't find people in your own community, and so you are finding people in Germany and France to play a video game. So it's like I don't fault them for that because no one is showing them. It's like, no, hey, good job. Way to make connections.
Yep.
Way to at least communicate, having somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
But maybe a real person would be good. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I like that right now we're actually discussing the other side of the conversation because I feel like recently it's kind of like, well, unplug, go out and make actual friends where it's like those friendships aren't actual.
No, they're actual
friendship.
Friends.
Yeah,
they are.
Correct. I like that right now we're discussing more than anything the opposite side of the conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
I think a lot of it is, unplug and get out and actually make friends in real life or in person, right? Sure. But at the end of the day, if that child or adult even is seeking connectivity, they're going to find it if they seek it out, right?
Yeah.
The hope would be in a coffee shop.
Yes.
And someone that they can actually
100%.
break bread with because there is so much magic in actual interaction, right?
Well, you can.
But if they're seeking it out, they're going to find it.
Oh, absolutely. And you can pick up what's really going on in the relationship when, as you were saying, how difficult it was. You had to have all of these questions. Well, and I would say I love talking to the next generation and asking them 3 questions and their brain shuts off. And I'm like, we haven't even started having a conversation.
Those were icebreakers, buddy. Hang in there.
Yeah.
How are you? I'm good. How was your day? Oh, it's good. What are you doing this week?
Oh, yeah.
You're like,
And they're gone.
okay, I need more than that. That wasn't a conversation, but it was a TikTok conversation.
Yeah.
Doesn't count.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's Love Month. One of the main reasons we wanted to have you on or a therapist on in general is to talk about love, what is needed, what is from a connectivity standpoint, and in your job, what do you feel most are lacking? What are they seeking? What do they need?
Okay, so my biggest passion right now, especially because in my job, I work with young adults. So I work with, our contract is from 16 to 25, I think.
That's awesome.
But usually it's like 19 years old is like the oldest. I'm really passionate about boundaries. Folks don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here for 3 hours because I'm on this like soapbox about boundaries.
Yeah.
When you said that you wanted to talk about identity and self-love, and I wrote these notes last night about this.
Let's go.
It was like I was reflecting and I was thinking, okay, well, first we have to build a foundation on boundaries.
Yeah.
And you have to build a foundation about like what's important to you and what are you willing to, what's the word? Compromise in a relationship. And when I look at my kids and I'm like, what's a healthy boundary? And they don't know.
Have them.
I'm like, okay, what's a boundary? And they'll say it, and there's something called a rigid boundary, a porous boundary, and a healthy boundary.
I want all of those because you're adding ammunition into my. Please go into definition on those.
So I don't have like all of them in front of me, but
Just
a rigid boundary is like you shut down anyone's opinion.
Sure.
Right? You're very like that. I'm not even willing to listen to you.
Sure.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
A porous boundary is, it's a sponge.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's strengths, and I talk to my kids about this. There's strengths in rigid and porous and healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I don't really like the word healthy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because it makes it sounds like that's the only one.
Correct.
Would you say more like open opinion? Like this is something that you're, you know what?
Open to.
I'm open to listening to this. I actually don't have a set opinion on this. I don't even have a set boundary because it's never been addressed to me.
Yes.
Perfect.
And so a lot of the times I encourage my kids, you know what, actually let's just have some rigid boundaries. Like let's just be like a hard and fast.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's go old man energy on this crap.
Yeah. Give me some examples of those conversations though. Like when you're discussing boundaries, the foundation for you is discussing boundaries. Why is that?
Because they compromise too much.
Got it.
They over compromise.
Yeah.
You're talking about a romantic relationship and you know, for example, you really enjoy watching sports. You love watching the Kings, right?
Let's go Kings.
Could you imagine if Hannah was like, absolutely not. You're not spending the money on the Kings, like tickets, nothing. Absolutely. You want to sit down and watch the game?
Babe,
No.
we had a good run.
Right?
Let's go Kings, light the beam. No, I'm
right?
kidding.
That's like
It's
a
terrible.
rigid boundary.
It's terrible.
She's
but
like not
don't
even.
test me.
I'm not trying to give you.
Oh, no.
What happened with the love month? Well,
Yeah.
Cam got divorced. And he tried to marry the Kings, and it just didn't want him. So
He had a rigid boundary.
Yeah, he had a
could have had a
rigid boundary.
sponge boundary.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
he wasn't listening during the porous conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. But this is like if you know who you are and your identity and you
Sure.
know your boundaries,
Yeah.
then you can have a successful relationship.
Sure.
Yeah.
All three of us have been married for quite some time. We know that it's not all peaches and rainbows.
Yeah.
But because we know who we are and they know who we are and
Yeah.
vice versa, you're able to work through all of that.
Correct.
Right?
100%.
So that's an example of a rigid boundary.
I like that.
That totally
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Having your foundation that you're building on, because without that foundation, what do you? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to throw this out there because I think my brain just connected this. So
Just now.
let's look at no. I think what you're telling me is I love it and I appreciate all the information. So I look at this as technology. I was talking to somebody about the evolution of technology and someone says, oh, it's scary. And I'm like, it's not. It's actually extremely encouraging and it's very beneficial. It can be, but it's not. So I know that opinions change when you get given new information, right?
100%.
But what happens when you are on platforms like TikTok that have millions of opinions and all of a sudden what you thought was rigid is now becoming porous in the same day?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, nope, things that you were porous on is now rigid and things that
Yeah.
were open are now closed. And you're changing your opinion so much that your identity can't settle
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
And so what I'm seeing is, at least that's how my brain's connecting,
Yes.
is
Yeah.
looking at the advancements of technology, but without us creating the family boundary.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of who I am is from my parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? I have loving parents. That I told my kids the other day, I said, you have two parents that love you, that are with you till the end. Having that is more valuable
Oh,
than
buddy.
anything else I could ever give you.
Gold.
And so when parents go, technology is going to help raise my kids, or this X system's going to raise my kids, when all of a sudden they have access to, oh, nuclear bomb threats happening in yada yada, oh, all this
Yeah.
stuff, and they don't know how to metabolize it because they
Yeah.
never had the conversation, it makes sense you'd have an identity crisis.
Correct.
Because they can't have a rigid opinion because they don't have the life experience or the
To
person
form one.
to help them through that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the simple answer response.
Please. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. We have to think about our brains because that's what inputs all the information, right?
Absolutely,
All right.
yeah.
So I'm not like a brain specialist.
No,
But
sure.
this is as much as they teach us.
Neuroscientist.
Right. You know when people like unplug, right? Like there's like this heavy like unplug or just be in like social media.
Sure.
Our brains, if it doesn't get enough rest, it's gonna implode with information.
Yeah.
It's like a computer. It's like, you know, Jordan plays like PlayStation or whatever the device is. It has to turn off
So proud
at
of
some
him.
point, right?
Yeah.
Because it'll get warm
Yeah.
because it's working too hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so my response to that is, I don't know. I'm
Sure.
with you. I really appreciate the information that's on TikTok sometimes. I think about our experiences because we're not like exactly the same age, but we're of the same like generation with technology, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
My only like example of like when you were saying like the nuclear bombs, my brain goes to 9/11.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so like some of us like witnessed that on live TV.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. And so, but everyone's parents had autonomy
Yeah, absolutely.
of what their kids were or were not going to hear.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So
Not the case.
you're
today.
right. They don't have autonomy.
No.
The kids are like, I just watched 2 hours of TikTok videos. I've got lots of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And
there's
you're
no one
like-
to ask
No
the
one
question
and no
to.
one to ask the question to.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna form my own opinion.
Right.
Hence the lack of rigid boundaries.
Wow. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So in the relationship, let's go back to the relationship element because I could stay in that data.
Yeah.
That's my jam. But
Yeah.
I want to hit in the relationship element. Apps. So romantic apps like, hey, you can meet singles around you, all that stuff. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious. There's no right or wrong answer.
I
by
mean,
the way.
how amazing.
Absolutely.
We had Yuba City population. Like, no hate or shade, but like, you know what I mean? Like, how
No hate or
stinking
shade.
cool.
Especially when you go to school with a lot of people, you're like, I'm never dating you.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
no, not happening.
Like, I love my husband. Right?
You're like, but there's
Message
this.
clear. But like, I could have gone to Tahoe and like had dinner with someone in Tahoe. I mean, the world is their oyster.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That being said, like, you better know who you are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you're going to be meeting lots of folks every Friday night.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, then, and I think that feeds into the acceptance element, right? How much, okay, and that when you say you need to know who you are, okay, give more of of your definition of that, because I've heard everyone says that phrase.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. And so it's one of those phrases that I could say, you need to know who you are. Okay, that's coming from a parent and business owner.
Yeah.
So I'm naturally going to have a skew of what that looks like. Also, my moral compass. So I'm going to come into a faith base on that. But I would like to know therapy.
It's okay.
It's not a word.
More coffee.
I would like to know more of what you mean by that.
Well, first of all, it evolves because the person that I am
From an identity standpoint?
From an identity standpoint. Yeah.
So I feel very grateful that at William Jessup throughout my bachelor's program, they made us self-reflect.
Nice.
So we had so many prompts, right? And so it's hard for me to answer that question like super eloquently and short.
You don't need to. Take
but
your
I
time.
guess it's what's important to you.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So what are your values? Where do you want to see yourself going? You know, do you want to leave your hometown?
Sure.
So do you want to find someone here? Do you want to wait? What's your career goals? Are you open to meeting someone and they're this person in 2015 and then they turn into someone else in 2024? My husband wasn't liking to make wood flags.
Sure.
When I met my husband,
But shout out to them.
Right.
Oh, they're amazing.
You know what I mean? And so it's like I know who I was. I knew that I was. I guess I'm like beating around the bush.
Sure.
I knew that I was someone that loved God and I wanted to live out my life for God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that I had hobbies and interests, but I knew that I wanted to grow.
Sure.
Specifically, you have to think about when you're entering a romantic relationship, what kind of families do you want to enter?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So there's a whole curriculum about who are you going to be.
No, absolutely.
But I think it's a lot of intentional self-reflection.
I love it. So yeah. So
Was there more there? It looked like you were about to.
yeah, I don't want to cut you off.
It's a
Permission
give and
to
take.
be as vulnerable
It's
as
a
you
give
would
and
like.
it's a give and take
Sure. 100%.
with yourself. And you want to make sure that whoever you're going to. Here's the other thing. Actually, no, let me take it back.
Okay, no, you're good.
We are in a generation that doesn't think about long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Hit it on the head on that.
So we are in a generation that doesn't have to think about who am I going to be. When you met Hannah and married Hannah, when you met Regina and married Regina, your guys' viewpoints about identity and relationships and all these things are very different from what's going on now.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And it's hard to get them to that because married is such an old thing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get married. So why do I have to worry about if I'm going to still be with this person from 5 years?
Yeah.
So then why do I have to know who I am?
Yeah.
When I figure out who I am and it doesn't match with this person, the relationship is over.
Yeah.
So how do you get people out of that?
And that happens. I mean, I'm thinking back to my time in the fitness industry, and I was just actually having this conversation with a training client the other day. Of my 6 years in the fitness industry, I can think back to there were 4 different couples that were married, and one of the 2 would start to see incredible health progress, and they got on this kick of eating healthier.
Yeah.
Hydration, movement, and it became such a part. Health became such a part of their identity.
Yeah.
They realized quickly. Excuse me. They realized quickly that their spouse was never going to change their habits, and they started to see their spouse as being that toxicity that got them into the unhealthy place in the first place.
Sure.
I remember having those conversations with clients like, I can't get my husband to budge, or the other side, I can't get my wife to budge. Like, I'm trying to better my habits and so on and so forth. And there were multiple times in my 6 years in training that they ended up separating as one was, and that's just the health side. There's so many ways or opportunities for people to grow up or change or adapt, if you would. But just from the health side, one party was kind of at an impasse and one was trying to make progress, and their spouse became a burden on that progress. So much so, I was like, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so. And well, actually, we're separated. And it's like,
wow.
What?
Yeah.
So from an identity standpoint,
For sure,
knowing where you stand and knowing up front in a relationship, hey, I think so much of society's problems today is the muddied waters of what is fact and relational, not rules, but relational norms, right?
Yeah.
If we went back to man being a man and woman being a woman, individually strong, and individually can take care of themselves.
100%.
The best relationships, in my opinion, are ones where two individuals are completely good on their own, and they find one another.
Yes.
Not seeking,
Yeah.
because you're seeking out of a want. And if you are seeking for something, you're going to find it. If you are not seeking something and you find it, that's going to add to you. It's not going to completely you, like you weren't whole in the first place, right? 2 100% are going to be so much better than a 50 and a 50.
I think you just answered it a lot better about knowing yourself.
Sure, 100%.
And also, I'm not an expert in theology, so I can't go into this
No, for sure.
You're good.
now. But when you said, are you able to take care of yourself and being complete? I think that muddied water gets really confused in the church.
Oh, 100%.
Sure.
Of this spouse completes me, but how does, you know what I mean? I can't go that route because I know.
Yeah.
No, you're not
Because I
wrong.
don't have all that education, but that's what we see, right? So in the church, we see incomplete folks getting married because, that's how they complete me. No.
No, it's bad theology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad.
I like the phrase "to thine own self be true." Right? If you're not true to yourself, it doesn't matter what comes around you. And if you don't have an opinion on something and you're not willing to formulate and even have that experiment, I think of this to kind of take it is the concept of future gains is based off the idea that, at least what I've read and what I've studied, is as humans, we're the only species on the earth to be able to negotiate with future. We have a concept of time that no other animal knows. So, for example, if I'm hungry, I can be like, I'm hungry. You know what? I'm okay. I'm hungry, but I'm trying to achieve this. Or I need to finish this, and then I'll eat at this point. We can have that conversation. You know about a monkey trap? How they catch a monkey?
Oh yeah,
I love it, man. So they put, they put a banana inside of I want to say it's like a jar, and it's very narrow up top. And the monkey reaches his hand in, grabs the banana, and once it goes, it can't pull it out.
Yeah, because
so
he's now making a fist.
He can't let it go, and so because the banana is coming out, he's not going to let go of the banana, and so it's perfectly humane. It's just, I'm not letting it go, and that's how they catch monkeys.
Wow.
Because it cannot differentiate. I'm hungry, I can wait. It goes, I'm hungry, must eat.
Yeah.
And so that idea of patience and long suffering,
That's exactly what
right,
I was about to say.
is exactly what we're missing as a society. It's that instant gratification.
Yeah.
But if I can go, you know what? In 5 years, I want this. I mean, any of your self-help books are like, think about where you want to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, how many times have you told that to your clients? And think about it.
Absolutely.
If I'm talking to someone about business, and I'm like, hey, you want to get your business up? Where do you want your business to be in a year?
Yeah.
Do you want it to just be in your house? Do you want to have a spot? Right? We have the ability for future gains by doing that.
Right.
But we don't do that with relationships.
Unfortunately.
We don't go, hey, this is a cool guy. I'm curious if my relationship's going to go with that guy.
We're in a microwave society, and it's swipe left, swipe right, swipe left, and then next thing you know, you're like 3 DM conversations in, you're like, okay, nope, block, boom, and then you just move on to the next.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have things quickly. You don't give it time to metastasize into something that can be beautiful.
Right.
Which is lost, unfortunately, in friendship and in partnered relationships. Unfortunately, that's just where we're at as a society.
I also know in personality traits, maybe you can speak to this. In personality traits, some people have more openness. Like I'm a creative. Creatives have much more openness, which is why there's always a reading group, a poetry group, a music group, because creatives are that way. But not all intellectuals are open.
No.
They want to make their formulations from afar, look at it from a distance and go, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And when they do make a friend, it is a friend for life. Right?
Right.
And I think it's often we don't look at the personality traits. Do you think in relationships coming together, that personality traits, if a person is willing, let me phrase it this way, if a person is willing to and has a good grounded version of who they are, and they're willing to come at it going, oh, I can adjust on that. Do you think personality traits genuinely matter when it comes to people coming together? Or do you think it's more just the idea of how you form your opinions and your identity?
I think it's about how you form your opinions and your identity.
Because I often hear, well, I'm an introvert, so it's not going to work. And I'm like, don't scapegoat.
Yeah.
I'm an extrovert.
And don't put a jar on your own personality. Don't lid your potential for growth.
Well, I mean, but we're all looking for that label because we feel like that forms our identity. It's like, oh, I'm X, Y, and Z. I would rather have a conversation where nobody knows where I stand on things and just kind of pick it and go, what do you think about this? And have an honest conversation, because as soon as certain labels are created, we instantly go, oh, I can't talk to you. And it's like, wait a minute. And I think that's a sad thing in relationships too.
Yes. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up. So when we're talking about identity and relationships, talking about the conversation and the trajectory of how much you open up to somebody. And not just divulging everything all at once, right? Because they are trying to, they are just trying to be like, here's everything, and how are you going to respond to that? Okay, bye. Like,
all right, one and done. Later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drop the mic. You're like, no, don't pick the mic back up.
Yeah, and so that's when we start talking about boundaries. Like, oh, okay, let's not tell them everything. Like, let's not tell them about every trauma that you've had. And they're like, what? We're supposed to be open and vulnerable. Not that open and vulnerable.
Dial it back a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Don't give them everything.
Yeah. And like you said, like both of you have mentioned the taking of the time of building the relationship. And a lot of the times, I do want to say this, a lot of the times you figure out who you are in a relationship. Right? I mean, I know I had previous relationships and those relationships formed me, right? You take something out of those relationships. Absolutely. So you come to this place of, okay, well, this is who I am as a romantic partner.
Sure.
And then you're going to evolve.
Oh, 100%.
And I think being open to it, right? I think the magic is being open to it. Having your foundation, knowing who you are, but being open to adaptation if it makes you better.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good place to be.
Well, and I also
you can't be so rigid. Imagine if everyone was just a carbon copy of their parents. There would never be growth. There would never be adaptation, period. We would only ever be spawn of their own ideals and theologies and everything else. It'd be terrible.
You can take societal trends and actually look at it, and you can see the polarizing that happens, right? World War II. I always love looking at that one. Like, it was rules, rules, rules. You need to do what we say. These are the rules. What happened right after that? Hippie movement. Free love, man. No war. The opposite. The absolute, as far opposite as you can get. And then what happened to the next generation? That was an industrial revolution of like, we need rules. We need business. We can't just not have jobs. And so we keep seeing that polarizing.
Cyclical.
So it's always funny because I laugh when I see what's happening now. It's like, you can be anything you want to anyone. You can do anything that you want. It's like, no, that's eventually going to flop. We're in our own social experiment.
Well, all of my friends are making their own sourdough bread. I have chickens in my backyard. Like,
I dig it.
We didn't think we were going to have that, but you take away our toilet paper and all of a sudden I'm going to have chickens in my backyard. Those two don't correlate. They don't solve the same problem, but we are. I'm sure in 2050, they're going to be like, wow, these girls went from, now I have lashes and nails on right now, but these girls went from
you look great, by
doing things, all the beauty services, to slumming it back in their backyard with some chickens. Well, the pandemic happened and the world shut down.
And now we bake bread and have chicken.
And I want to make sure I have bread and eggs, like the basics.
Well, that's adaptation. That's adaptation, as Kim was saying. It's like we can't control what's going to happen, but we're going to use wisdom at what we see and make an obvious opinion and go, you know what? I'm going to just change kind of how I do stuff. When it's funny because everyone I'm talking to is getting into jarring. They're getting into sourdough bread. They're getting into all these things. And people that aren't paying attention in those realms are actually like, no, I don't care. I'm just but they're getting more depressed because they're not doing, at least my assumption on this is they're not doing anything to better the situation. So they feel like they can't control it at all. And then they let go of all responsibility. And they go, like, I can't fix that crap. I don't care. And when you get to that point of I don't care, you just coast through life until something sparks you up. And you're like, why don't I care? And I think that's a journey that everyone kind of has to go on to. Same thing with relationships.
Well, right. If you don't have control, or if you're trying to seek control, right? That's where that boundary comes in, where I'm having a conversation with a client and I'm saying, well, what's the onset? When did this start? Oh, well, this started back then. Well, what was going on? What was the difference? Oh, all of a sudden my opinion didn't matter. Okay, so what would happen if you advocated your opinion? Oh, they would completely shut it down. Okay, so are we not in a healthy relationship?
Sounds like a prisoner exchange.
But
I'll let
he
you.
loves me. But he loves me.
And so then in the therapist role, I am, there's a lot of extra grace.
No, it's your
right at my 9 to 5. It's a lot of extra grace, and at home I'm like, no, can you just like fix it like in 30 seconds? I'm not gonna allow you. No, I'm teasing, but
no, I get it.
Sorry, Jordan.
It's so, and that's why. And then there's like this piece about therapy of that's confusing for some folks, that they're like, oh, well, I just adore my therapist. Well, yeah, because we're giving you all this extra space, and we're also not biased. Like we only have your truth.
We're not coming at you with a hammer. We're not an argument that you should have had 3 months ago about something that's been slowly degrading your conscience until it's like, I can't take it anymore. And that's, I see that all the time. And then the other thing is kids. Like me and my wife make a rule when we go out on a date, we don't talk about our kids and we do not talk about work. Because all of a sudden we're not actually talking about
each other,
anything. We're not actually trying to, and I'm still saying stuff. 14 years of marriage, we're still saying stuff where she's like, I didn't know that. I was like, really? Oh, I thought I told you about that. And there's so much because as the layers come off, but it's that amount of, I understand that the kids will not be in the house forever. The coffee shop will evolve and change. Those things as they happen have to be addressed, but I need to be in the now and in that moment to address those things because that's the most important thing I can do in those moments. So what do you think on maybe you've seen this? I think you probably have. Have you noticed attention spans being captivated?
Do you mean or not captivated?
Or not captivated. My brain goes captivated as in like 50 other things has its attention. You can't get them in the moment.
You mean in session or just in their own lives?
Either one. I would say in their own lives because that's more.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's just kind of like picking and grabbing. Like they're like, it's hyperfixation. And I mean that in the very loosest way because I'm not like. There's also something about like labels. Like I'm not.
No, I'm
right.
We've been trying to do really well, and I'm actually proud of us for not labeling a lot of stuff. A lot of this is like, no, these are things that we see, and it's not to anger any group. This is like these are observations. That we're just going. Hey, I see this.
Yeah. So it is a lot of because the world is our oyster.
Yeah, it is.
Right? You can pick up any kind of hobby and I can start a business. I can start a digital business. And so it's just this, there's a lot. And it's like, can you just maybe see this through? And then you get asked, well, what does that even mean? What do you mean see it through?
It's microwave society. Everything is instantaneous. So there's no time which will help form those bonds and those relationships, getting back to relationships. Well, it's like if we're in a spot where everything is instantaneous, instant pleasure, boom, I made a post and you check it 60 seconds ago, like no one's liked it. Where's my I'm here for my dopamine hit.
Need that hit.
No one has liked it or shared this. Oh my gosh. Right? But if we get to that spot in society where that's the grounds for our relationships, we're in a bad place. Right? So like you were alluding to earlier, time, the lack of value in time, that it's gone, unfortunately. So how do you do your best in a work setting to recreate those foundations or those truths for those individuals that you're working with?
We have to highlight their strengths and we have to highlight baby steps.
Yeah.
So, reminding folks you came in with this. How was this week? Oh, it was good. Okay, great. Like, we got through this week.
Yeah.
Right? I am very big about goals, and it's not because I want my clients to achieve things, but I want them to feel that dopamine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, you want to become a carpenter.
Sure.
Okay, so can we set a goal of you going to the campus to take a tour?
Perfect.
So that we can, because there's something about checking off something on our list
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
that makes us feel good.
Absolutely.
And they're like, oh, okay. So now it's no longer, it doesn't feel so unattainable. I don't know if that answered your question,
Yeah,
but
no.
Oh, it 100%
It absolutely does.
it's just slowing them down, which that's really hard,
Yep.
right? We have to slow down and just, what's the trajectory of this? Okay, let's do this, and let's do this. And then all of a sudden we get them to in college.
Yeah.
Right? And we've seen it. And I've seen kids in Sacramento that had absolutely no high school credits and graduated.
Yeah.
Like it can be done.
Absolutely.
With time.
Right. I don't know where we lost that trade in the world. I don't know what happened where all of a sudden things just...
I think actually, I'll give a throw at that. I actually think I know what it is. It was always an event when you went somewhere, right? And so, like, say I went to a concert and I saw everybody on stage playing, you'd be like, wow, that's like such a good guitarist. And in being around people, you're like, wow. And then that person was feeding off of you and you're feeding off of them. But then when all of a sudden you go on to the internet and you see a 10-year-old kid who's better than any musician that you'll ever see. And you're like, well, why would I even try? And that 10-year-old's figured it out.
Yeah.
I can't do. And then you instantly create those limitations because you're seeing people excellent in their craft that's being elevated.
Yeah.
But you don't know them.
Yeah.
You don't know the journey that they were ever on.
Right.
You don't know the time that they put into it. And so because of that disconnect, you can just go online and see somebody do it perfectly. Why would you try?
Yeah. Or why would you go and pay to see it in person?
Yeah. Oh, that,
Like,
well,
why would I
that's
go
movies.
to? Why would I go to watch the Harlem Globetrotters make full court shots
my gosh.
backwards when I can just watch 30 videos in a row of the exact same thing while they're throwing the ball over their house?
Yeah.
Dude, perfect. You know?
Yeah. Well,
So it's like,
love
okay,
Dude Perfect.
well, if you can seek it and have it instantaneously,
Yeah.
and there's no longer value in the time and the craft and going to the concert
Yeah.
to watch the orchestra
Yeah.
or going to see Hans Zimmer,
Oh, bro.
right?
Such a great.
Instead
oh
of
my
just
gosh.
listening to it. It's like I think the magic there is in seeking out the real and seeking out the in-person and seeking out the authentic and the live
Yep.
instead of the pre-recorded microwave popcorn version of whatever you're seeking out.
I agree. Yeah, it reminds me of my dad. It reminds me of a story with my dad. I was 9 years old. There was a Christmas play happening at the school I was at, and I was like, I signed up for it. I was like, this is gonna be amazing. And then I changed my mind as soon as I realized how much work I was gonna have to put in. And it was a Saturday morning, and I was like, I just want to watch my cartoons and not do this. And I remember my dad was like, come on, let's go. And we lived out of town. It was 15 minutes out of town. And so we get in the car and we drive up there, and I'm just quietly sitting there, just like shaking my head. What's going on? I was like, I don't want to do this. 9. And he goes, you don't want to do this? I said, yeah. And he goes, you gave him your yes, though, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you're going to do it because you gave them your yes. And you're going to
Shout
do
out to
things,
good parenting.
right? He's like, you're going to do things you don't like to do. You think I like working on cars all the time? I said, I thought you like it. He goes, oh, no. Oh, there's some.
Yep.
He said, but I do those things because I told them that I would. And we have to do what we say we're going to do. And from that moment, it was this, oh, wow, I thought everything adults did, they liked, I thought. And that moment of transparency rocked me, because anytime I'm like, I don't want to do this, I have a memory pop up where it's like, okay, no, you said you're going to do it, then do it.
Yeah.
And it brought that conviction. And so that's really an important element that we don't
Absolutely.
have. As the family unit itself declines, we're going to stop seeing that excellence in children that should be there, and parents checking out. I mean, it's easy for me to say I love my wife, but we can sit in a room on our cell phone and ignore each other. And maybe that's what we need to do in that moment.
Yeah.
But if I notice she's mad and I'm just decide to zone out on my phone,
Don't do it.
right? At what point am I going to go, look, this is going to be uncomfortable and I don't want to do this, but I need to do this.
Yeah.
Because the future of this relationship is more valuable than the 5 seconds of me finishing that level on that app, or me seeing that other post, or finishing that video. And so I think that we've seen that decline. So tell us how people can connect community-wise in the county if they're looking for some help, what the county resources have so that people can get.
So if you go to suttercounty.org, I believe,
Okay.
And then you go to behavioral health, you can see what children's services we have and what adult services we have. Obviously, you can go to yubacounty.org too.
Sure.
In some areas, it's Sutter Yuba Behavioral Health, and then some areas are separate. So sometimes we are like a bi-county situation.
Sure.
And everyone has their own intake process. So like for me and my department, there's a process to get to us. You have to go, you would need to like have like a hospital crisis.
Sure.
Right. Or do an intake. And so once they do the intake, they figure out what's the best program for you.
Perfect.
For children, for adults, I think because I'm not in the adult program, I believe it's just intake and then you're just in the adult program. There's no like levels.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's the easiest way.
There you go. From a, do you do any, or maybe this is future in your career, do you do any like private practice on the side, or you do?
Yeah. It's not private. I wouldn't consider it private practice, but it is on the side. So on the weekends, I am on betterhelp.com.
Oh,
Very
awesome.
cool.
So,
Very cool.
which is awesome in the sense that I get to work with a whole different demographic.
Yeah.
It's only in California because my license is only in the state of California.
Sure.
But it's really nice to be able to see culturally, not nice to see, but refreshing because you get people from the Bay, and mostly it's the Bay in Southern California. And it's lower level needs, still a need.
Sure.
But at Sutter County, I am in the program where folks have had multiple hospitalizations. They've been either in the ER or they've been admitted for several days. On BetterHelp, I put on my bio so that they could filtrate and match me with big life transitions. So I just lost my job, a lot of losses.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about grief and loss therapy.
That's awesome.
In the sense of the traditional sense that everyone thinks of, like someone passed away.
Oh, for sure.
So I work with a lot of folks that have recently lost folks. And I didn't think that was going to happen. William Jessup had us take that class as our curriculum.
Yeah.
And I was like, who in their right mind wakes up and thinks, this is what I want to do? I can't wait to go to work.
Sure.
I absolutely love it.
That's awesome.
I absolutely love it. I love when you walk through this. I don't know if you've walked through this, but walking through your experience with your dad and thinking about.
Joe has as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
you have too?
100%.
Okay. Thinking about, I don't know if I want to keep telling the same feelings over to the same person.
Sure.
Right? Like my wife knows that I'm sad.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? But having that space and that language to process all of that, I'm very passionate about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
And having that person to offload some of that to, if they don't have that person in their own life, is everything. So shout out to you. I'm happy to know you. I'm happy to call you a friend. Thank you for taking the time this morning to helping us better understand therapy in that setting and all that you do for not even Sutter and Yuba County, but just Northern California in general. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Very, very.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Absolutely.
you for being here.
Thank you for checking out the Cam and Joe Show.
If you guys are liking our content so far, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also listen to us on Spotify.